My husband abandoned me at the train station with our newborn twins. 20 years later, he walked into my office for a job interview without recognizing me. The last thing my husband ever said to me was, "Wait here. I'll be back in 10 minutes." I waited for 8 hours, holding our newborn twins. He never came back. His phone was switched off. His family claimed they hadn't heard from him. The police listed him as a missing person, but deep down, I knew the truth. He had chosen to leave. I spent the next 20 years raising my son and daughter alone. There were days I skipped meals so they could eat. Nights I cleaned office buildings after working my daytime job. Birthdays where I wrapped dollar store gifts and pretended they were expensive. I never remarried. Not because I couldn't, because I didn't have time. My children became my entire world. By the time they graduated college, I had quietly built a successful logistics company from the ground up. It started with 1 delivery van, then 3, then 20. Eventually, we expanded nationwide. I never appeared in magazines, never gave interviews. I preferred staying behind the scenes. Life was finally peaceful, until one rainy Monday morning. My HR director walked into my office. "We've got an unusual executive applicant." She handed me his resume. The name made my heart stop. David Collins, my husband, the man who disappeared 20 years earlier. Apparently, he had no idea my company owned the building. I stared at his application for nearly an hour. Then I said 3 words. "Schedule the interview." The next morning, he walked into the conference room. Older, gray-haired. A little slower, but unmistakably him. He looked directly at me and smiled politely. No recognition. None. I had changed enough that he didn't know who I was. I asked the first question. "Tell me about the biggest mistake of your life." He looked uncomfortable, then quietly answered, "Leaving my family." I nearly lost my composure. Then came the first twist. David didn't abandon us willingly, or at least, that's what he claimed. According to him, he had borrowed money from dangerous loan sharks after secretly gambling away our savings. The day he left me at the station, those men kidnapped him. They forced him to work for them overseas until his debt was paid. Every escape attempt ended in violence. By the time he finally returned home years later, we were gone. Our apartment had been demolished. My phone number no longer existed. He spent years searching, never finding us. I wanted to believe him, but 20 years is a long time. Then I asked another question. "If you found your family today, what would you say?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he cried, "I'd apologize for every birthday I missed, every graduation, every nightmare they survived without me. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want them to know I never stopped loving them." I ended the interview, without revealing who I was. That evening, I drove home in silence. Then I did something I never thought I would. I told my children everything. The next day they asked to meet him. I refused. They insisted. "It's our decision, too." We arranged dinner. David walked into the restaurant. The moment he saw our twins, he froze. He immediately recognized our son, not because of his face, because he wore the same small silver necklace David had placed around his neck the day he was born. David collapsed into tears. The restaurant became completely silent. Then came the biggest twist. My daughter quietly placed an old photograph on the table. It showed me waiting at the train station, holding 2 babies, taken by a newspaper photographer. The headline read, "Young mother waits 12 hours for missing husband." David had carried that newspaper clipping in his wallet for 20 years, completely worn out. He pulled it from his pocket. It was the exact same photograph. He never stopped carrying it. None of us spoke for several minutes. Finally, my son asked, "Can we ever become a family again?" Nobody had an answer. Healing 20 years isn't simple. Today, David isn't my husband again. We're not pretending nothing happened. But every Sunday, he comes over for lunch. He tells stories our children never got to hear. Sometimes we laugh. Sometimes we cry. Sometimes we sit in silence. Because not every reunion ends with a wedding. Sometimes it ends with forgiveness. And sometimes that's even harder. If you'd asked me 20 years ago whether I'd ever see him again, I would have said no. Life had other plans. What would you have done if the spouse who disappeared 20 years earlier suddenly appeared in front of you? Would you have given David another chance, or was 20 years too much to forgive? Comment below what you think.